Hey talented authors, I'm Bryn Donovan, acquiring fiction editor by day. My real name is Stacey Donovan, and author by night. And this is a video about top 10 mistakes you want to avoid when you're writing query letters. A couple of people asked me to do this video, and I was happy to do it because this channel is all about helping writers reach their writing goals. If you're not subscribed already, go ahead and subscribe. Hit that red button on the side or below. When we're talking about query letters, we're most often talking about querying agents because a lot of publishers won't take unagented submissions. However, a few publishing houses do, and so sometimes we're querying editors also. One of the first mistakes we can make in a query letter is querying the wrong person or the wrong publisher. In other words, we're querying a publisher and agent who doesn't deal with the kind of story that we've written. I think there are a couple of reasons that writers do this, and they do it a lot. I would say that when my company has had open submissions, about 20% of our submissions are of work that we don't publish at all. And I think the two reasons that this happens is, first, sometimes people just simply haven't read the submission guidelines at all. But I think some of them are from people who have read the submission guidelines, but they think, well, maybe when they read my story, they'll publish it after all. You know, they say they only publish romance and mystery, but once they read my memoir, they're going to want to publish my memoir. It really doesn't work that way. Agents and publishers have specialties that they focus on. So when you send your work to someone who has not said that they're interested in that work, it's a waste of your time and their time. But it's more of a waste of your time because it's very quick for an agent or an editor to say no. And I've said this before, but writers do not have time to waste. So don't waste your time sending it to places where they haven't asked for it. Number two is wasting the subject line in the email. And the funny thing is, I haven't seen anybody else talk about this, and I think it's such an important point. The subject line of your email is your first opportunity to pique the interest of an agent or an editor. When we have open submissions, I should say unagented submissions, about 75% of those emails have subject titles like query or submission, novel submission. And that is such a missed opportunity. So here's what I recommend to have instead in that subject title. First of all, you've got about 60 characters to play with. You don't want to go too much longer than that, though it's not a hard and fast rule. What I recommend is the word query, and then your title, and then your genre, and then your word count. Those four things. We're saying query so they know it's a query. Why are we saying a title? To get them interested. Why are we putting in the genre and the word count? So, like I was saying before, they'll know that it's something that they actually acquire or they actually represent. So with those four things, you can really get people's interest. You know, a lot of agents and editors are reading a few emails in between meetings, and they get lots of queries, they get lots of other emails. And so you want to stand out, of course. And this is what they're going to click on first over an email that's just titled query. I'll just give you an example. If you had two emails and one of them is called query and the other one, the subject title is Hunt for the Queen, epic fantasy, 98,000 words, Hunt for the Queen sounds more interesting, right? Common mistake number 3 in query letters is Dear Sirs, beginning your email with the phrase Dear Sirs or even Dear Sir. I get emails like this now and again. I don't know if it's weirder to be misgendered or to be multiplied, but anyway, it's really odd. I think it's probably like some old-timey advice about this is what you write if you don't know who is reading your letter, but it's outdated advice. The truth is that most agents are women and most editors and publishing houses are women. Whenever I get those, I feel like I should have like a top hat and a monocle or something like that, right? If you're querying an agent, you should know that agent's name. Absolutely, it should be customized to that agent. That's someone that you're hoping to have a close working relationship with. With a publishing house, if you have done your research and you just cannot find who is going to be reading your email, then Dear Editor is just fine. Number 4 is related to that, and that is addressing the wrong person or the wrong company entirely. If you're sending out batches of emails or a few queries at a time, this is very easy to do. But if you send a query letter to Entangled saying how proud you would be to be published at Carina Press, Entangled is not going to be impressed. Some of those biggest mistakes like that are the easiest ones to make. So check again before you send to make sure you're addressing the right person. Number 5 is not telling the agent or editor what your book is actually about. This is the whole point of a query letter, is to tell them about your book, but sometimes this gets forgotten. When I'm reading a query letter, I'm looking for a few things. I want to understand who the main characters are. I want to understand what their goals are, and I want to understand what the main conflict is. Now, in my writing series here on YouTube, Blank Page to Final Draft, I encourage people to write a plot outline before they write their novel. If you do this, it will make writing a query letter so much easier. But either way, those are the few things that I'm really focused on: who the characters are, what their goals are, what the conflict is, and then how they resolve it. Mistake number 6 in a query letter is kind of the opposite of that, which is saying too much about your story. It can be hard to boil things down, absolutely, but you don't need to go too much into subplots. You don't need to go too much into secondary characters. You don't need to go into so much detail that you're spilling over into the next page and the page after that, and your query letter starts to look like a synopsis. If you look at the back covers of books, or if you look at product descriptions on barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com, that can give you really good inspiration for how to boil that story down for your query letter. Number 7 is bragging too much in your query letter. Bragging about your story, bragging about yourself. When I get a query letter that says things like, "This is a brilliant story. Everybody at my church read it and they also thought it was brilliant. It's going to sell millions of copies. It's not like that formulaic crap you usually publish in this genre," it's a huge turnoff for me. So you want to be confident, but you also want to be professional and respectful and not overhype your project too much. Number 8 is including too much random personal info. This isn't as big of a mistake as some of these other things, but it's something I'm going to caution against because, again, I want you to look really professional. I wore a blazer on purpose today to focus on that whole idea about being professional in a query letter. The end of a query letter can sometimes kind of go into that kind of dating profile vibe where you're talking about your hobbies and you're talking about your pets and your family and that kind of thing. And I would really caution against that. Now, if you have biographical information that actually connects to your manuscript, for instance, it's about a nurse and you're a nurse, or it takes place in New Orleans and you live in New Orleans, it's about knitting and you're a passionate knitter, then that's great to have in there. Of course, writing credentials are great to have in there. If you've published before, we want to know that. Everybody wants to know that. If you won a writing contest, if you're part of a writing group, if you have a degree in English or in creative writing, that's good to mention. If you have a blog, all of those things are good to mention. But otherwise, don't go overboard on biographical information. And something you may be wondering if you're an unpublished author is, well, what do I say about myself? You can say, I'm a voracious reader and I am working hard to improve my craft. That'll be perfect. Number 9 with query letters is being paranoid that people are going to steal your ideas. This is such an amateur concern, and let me explain why. Agents and editors, for the most part, are quite honest, and they got into the business because they love books, they love writing, they love working with authors. And so they're not likely to steal ideas because of that. They're also not likely to because it's actually more work to steal an idea from someone and make someone else write it than it is to just acquire a good book, right? So they don't really have any motivation at all to do that. And when I get query letters, say from experienced literary agents, they never make a point of saying this work is copyrighted, don't steal this idea, because they know that would be ridiculous and unprofessional. Now, if you're querying an agent or you're querying an editor, you're starting off trying to make a relationship with them, a rapport. It's a horrible way to start out, to basically say in your letter, "Hi, I think you're probably a thief. I don't want to work with you if that's what you think." It's a huge amateur move. No one's going to steal your idea. And the truth is that somebody else probably wrote the same idea already. So it's not something you need to worry about. The last mistake I want to talk about with query letters is submitting work in the wrong format. If an agent says to paste the synopsis or chapter 1 in the body of an email, go ahead and do that. She probably said that so that she can read it on her phone with no problem. If someone asks for a Word document attachment, give them that. I hate it when people send me PDFs because I like to make comments and track changes in Word as I go along. Agents and editors have reasons for asking for the formats that they're asking for, so go ahead and follow directions and give it to them in the right format. So those are 10 very common mistakes people make when they're querying. You know, querying is a very tough process. It's that way for everybody. But I think by avoiding some of these things, you can make your query letter more professional and get off on a right foot with an agent or an editor. If you have questions about query letters or about the whole process, please go ahead and ask them below. I will answer them, or if it's a long answer, maybe I'll do a follow-up video, something like that. If this video was helpful, please go ahead and hit the like button, the thumbs up button below. Thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.